Dear students, as you know that the poem entitled Death Be Not Proud is important for the students of school, college and university. This has been very integral part of our examination and it is equally important as I think for the common viewer as well who is interested in knowing death in true sense. We find that there are many shades of opinion about death, and the writers, the poets, the laureates, and the philosophers, the religious teachers have been dealing with the topic of death in different perspective. Now we have just this very much important thing to talk about. We can understand that this is the summary part that we are going to deal with. It is just very easy to understand the summary because at surface level the poet is challenging the very much established power and strength of death. We know that the poet has been of the opinion that death is not so mighty as we have been thinking about it. There are conventional views about death that it is mighty, it is dreadful, and it is mighty because it kills us. It is dreadful because it makes our life over with it. And we think, common people think, that there is no further death once we physically die. But here in the very opening part of the poem, the poet addresses death not to be proud and arrogant. Here we should notice that it is just the very much opposite opinion that the poet is trying to establish here through this poem. In the just a logical argument, the poet is saying that most people have been taking death to be very important. People have been thinking about death very important, but it is not the reality. We can say that we have been making death so important for many regions that death is just going to finish everything. But we should notice that it is less effective than drug, than magic, and we see that it is as good as just what we can call just a sleep rest, because in sleep and in rest we also find that death is going to be over. We do not find that there is any kind of problem when you are in sleeping condition, or just when we get tired we take rest and we go into slumber. But we think that death is just playing a kind of role which is just to make our soul transmit from this worn out body to the new body. We find that it is just Gita's viewpoint also that poet is adopting in this poem. As a matter of fact, we know that the poem is much interested in challenging death. It is just the very much pitiable figure that death has been described. We can say that here in the very beginning part of the poem we find that death has been described as just very mighty, very dreadful. These mighty and dreadful adjectives are to make death just so what you can call fearful figure as conventionally death has been described. We can say that it was against that conventional view that the poet had chosen the adjective like pity, less effective, just weak, pitiable. This is what you can call just a contradictory argument that a poem is trying to establish. But what he is trying to establish is based on logical ground. It is just on what we can call logical just basis that poet is trying to make his idea open. He is not trying to say that this is all because of the fact that he is saying he is a cleric and he is a religious teacher, so people should accept, as he is saying, that we should not be fearful of death, and we should just be free of death and so on. He knows that teaching someone is one thing, but making someone convinced with the fact, with the situation, is quite another thing. And it is better to convince one than teach one. Once we are just successful in convincing the people on the basis of argument, on the basis of logic, those people always remain just stick to the principle, stick to the situation, stick to the view that he has been taught. He is not going to change his attitude. He is not going to make his attitude change and so on. So the poet has so many arguments to talk that just in day-to-day observation, what we are finding is a visible fact. We can say that it is realistically speaking, that poet is saying that we see someone dying, and with that, the personality of that person is extinct, that physically we do not find them anymore. We can say that it is here that death is applying its power, and it is what the limitation of the power of death is, that it makes someone just physically absent from this world. But the poet is of the view that it is not the ultimate, what he can call existence of the person. A person is not to be dealt with in terms of the physical existence only. We know that the existence of the person is going beyond that kind of thing. We can simply say that we have just to live more than our physical existence. It is why he is in defiance of the established convention. Established convention is commonly made. It is not generally based on any kind of argument and logic. It is based on common opinion that people are feeling and people are thinking. Maybe people are thinking just fearful of the thing which is not so important for him, and which is actually not dreadful to him, but because in some way or others in society, by the mass opinion, it has been established that we should be fearful, so we should just simply try to just be fearful and so on. Especially we can say when I was in my childhood, just I was told by my grandmother and so on that we should not go to the garden where dead bodies burned, because she believed that just after that the just a ghost is only living there. There is no just physical existence, and that surely change into ghost, and so just psychologically we are made fearful of the ghost, which was just, as a matter of fact, watching here and there and moving here and there, and they are going to just take other people in their grief, and they are going to kill other people also. It was what just the established view was about death, just I too have been taught in my family, in my society, and in most of the societies, we can say the same kind of just established view is running, and people are making their children say the same story of death, which can make children fearful and terrorized, because they were always just a group of people who have just been of the opinion that they should earn money, just aspirating that kind of just what you can call horrific a story about death. And so, in the name of death, also, the profession was run, and profession was run only when we are just going to make someone fearful of something and some reality. So it is just a kind of just a viewpoint which was going to run into society. But we can say that this kind of thing is actually not the reality, in the sense that the poet says that the supreme master of our body is of our life is not body but soul, which lives beyond this life also. And it is what our religious text like Gita teaches. Lord Krishna teaches that this physical life is of no mean, is of no value, because just it is temporary, it is transient. You simply do not have to live for just a long time with this physical reality, with this physical existence. We have to go beyond that kind of physical reality. So we see that our soul is the supreme master of our life, that is not killed by what we can call death. Death does not have to just rule over our soul. It remains always. It is always going to be just very much living after this physical life is over. So we should see that death is associated with fate, chance, kings, and desperate man, because we can say, as common people are always just overruled by what we can call fate, chance, because they do not have to do anything against their fate and chance. So the poet thinks that the death is also governed by fate and chance, because death itself is to be killed. It is destined to happen that death is going to be killed, and death is itself powerless, because it is not completely making our life extinct. The major chunk of our life is a spiritual life, that is the life of soul. And the people remember our life not because of this physical life that you are living, but they remember us for our spiritual life, that we have contributed to the world, we have contributed to the society, and so on. So we can say, when such a mighty and dreadful thing is itself under the control of fate and chance, it is itself under the control of just what we can call just some other major forces. The forces of soul is much more mighty than the force of death. We can comparatively say that death is not going to make our soul defeat. It always remains, and it is never under the grip of death. So we should not be anyway just unhappy seeing the death approaching. It is what the method is there, and we should always know that death is itself transient. Death's power is itself limited. As we have the physical transient existence, so is the transient existence of just death also. It is just working upon this body, and so equally poison works upon this body also, because poison can also kill our physical existence. War can also kill our physical existence. Sickness can kill our physical existence. It does not mean that poison, war, and sickness are mightier enough or more dreadful that we should always be fearful of all these kind of things. We should notice that yes, these are working to just the limited extent, so its power is applicable to the limited range just of existence. We should not just make it glorify, just making some hymns, making some psalm on death and so on. So the title of the poem itself is indicative of the fact that it is just a kind of address death, be not proud. Death itself is an address word, that the poet is addressing death not to be proud and not to be arrogant of its powerful. It is just a challenge that the poet is posing before the death. So we can say that it is realistically explained, and the poet has been very much successful to go into the heart and mind of the reader and the people. He knows that when there is a kind of fear very much set in our mind and body, it cannot be removed only by simple teaching and simple narrative of the death and so on. So he is just going to make people ready mentally to challenge this death, because he has presented brilliant what you can call ideology, just for the people to understand, for the people to know. Because if we are going to just listen to the voice of our soul, that is the ultimate master of our life, we should not be sorry for death that is just coming to us. So just this physical world itself is just transient. We see that it is changeable. No physical just thing is going to overlive. We can say no matter how just powerful it is, but it has to die. It has to make itself over because of some internal contradiction. When just some physical thing is begotten, we find that it is begotten with some internal contradiction. So we should not understand that the poet has this kind of thing to notice. So we can say just that we should be very much just ready, mentally ready. And when we are fearful, then just we do not look at death to be the mighty weapon which should always make us, even the just image of death is going to make us fearful. And the poet is not just to glorify death in such a way as it has been done. Now we are going to talk about the theme part of this poem. We should notice that this poem is no doubt a devotional poem, because it is out of religious feeling of duty that the poet has written this poem. We should notice that just in 17th century England, Catholicism was also facing lots of challenges. Just it was the time of scientific experiment, we noticed, and there were so many reformations going on into the religious text, and people were raising the questions of religious interpretation of life and death. At that time, the poet has a religious duty to bring the attention of the people back to the religious doctrine. And he was convinced of the fact that it is not possible only by teaching method, only by saying what has been written into the religious text, because it is not enough to make us convinced, and unless people is convinced, we cannot make people inclined to that area of interest. So no doubt he has the devotional just idea behind writing this poem, because the very purpose of writing this poem is just to make people just attached with religious duty and so on. But he at the same time takes resort to argument. He takes resort to logic, because with the development of natural science, we can say everywhere people have started thinking logically. People have started talking on the basis of arguments. And the thing is going to be established not only on the basis of belief and faith, because here there are some doubts whether we should accept faith or not. So it is skeptic. And the thing which is skeptic is not very devotionally, very truly applied by the people. So the people are just thinking that they have developed their civilization, and even the religious civilization is to be developed on the basis of argument, not on the basis of simple just belief and truth. So most often we can say that when we are talking about the metaphysical things like death, like life, like God, we are generally thinking that these things are to be accepted by belief, because it has been said in the religious text, so we should accept it, because we should respect our religious text, but the poet think that yes, to respect religious text is one thing, but to respect religious text with total conviction is quite another thing. And we develop conviction on the basis of argument, on the basis of logic, and new conviction is to be established there, even in the field of religion, that do not follow anything which we think that the thing is not argumentatively proved. So it is a matter of proof. We know that everything is not proved as we are proving the thing of and phenomena of natural sciences, because they are under the purview of physical world where we can observe anything. Most often you find that death is not to be observed as distinctly as we are observing other physical phenomena taking around us. However, we can say, if our method of understanding, if our approach to deal with that kind of thing are just logical or argumentative, we can say we can better find more interesting fact, more convincing fact for the people. And we find that this is also known as Holy Poem 10, and this is what the first point of theme that we should understand. Now we can say that it is a representative and realistic poem on death. We find, as I have earlier also just mentioned, that it is not only the first poem on death which has been written so authentically. Okay, there are so many poems which have been brilliantly composed on death, but whenever there is a dialogue, there is a discussion on death, this poem is just by and large quoted by the speaker, because whatever has been told here and the way in which the matter has been told is really marvelous, is really convincing. And it is why it is taken to be the representative and realistic poem on death. Realistic in the sense that we find people living more than life also. We do not find that with death the just work of just people is also finished. We see that just still Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, Jesus, and Buddha, Mahavira are living more than their lives. It is just not due to physical existence that they are known that they have lived this short span of life. They are remembered because of the fact that spiritually they are purified and they serve the society into the best possible way. This kind of realistic observation that you find about the people and the great scientists and the great politicians and thinkers, the idea becomes quite clear that death is just not the final thing. This is not the final instrument to kill and extinct our personality completely. And so he has denied the conventional view. He is not just ready to accept the conventional view, because yes, when we are accepting the conventional view, it makes us just full with what you can call negative ideology about life. We start taking life not so seriously. We think that when death is so mighty and it is to come, it is to kill us. Now, then there is no need of doing anything. There is no need of contributing to society, because we know that physically death is going to make everything finish, make everything over. Nothing will remain after my life. Then why? Why should you do anything, and why should you take just any attempt, make any attempt for making our life better, making our thought better, making our just life spiritually advanced? So we think that thinking death in that term, that it is mighty and dreadful, and it is going to finish our life, it is going to make everything over, and so we start thinking in that vein, which is not acceptable, which is not progressive either. We can say just when we are keeping just death just before our spiritual existence, it is just like keeping cart before the horse. That is why he has denied just a conventional view, to make people more sure of life, more sure of their work, more sure of their persistent improvement of life. And we should not stop our life all because of the very much dreadful power of death. So it was essential to criticize death, as it was essential to mock death so sarcastically, as the poet is making here, and by examples, by instances, just he is going to reject whatever was the established norm about the death. So he is also making the prediction. It is so authentic. The poet is so authentic in his argument that he is making the prediction that death shall die its own death. Because yes, we can kill death, and we are killing death, and several peoples have killed death by their death itself, because their death is actually so glorified because of the spiritual advancement. They were not living this life only just for just enjoyment sake, or rather say it was not for physical enjoyment sake that they were living life and they were taking life. They were taking life for a spiritual enjoyment, that spiritual pleasure and sublime life is to realize. And death itself makes our life sublime. When we are talking about death of Mahatma Gandhi, we can say that death has made him sublime. And when we are talking about the death of martyrs, we find death of martyrs just is making their life sublime. So had they been fearful, they would not have been just fighting for the safety of their nations. If just they should think that, okay, definitely the mighty death is waiting in the battlefield, then just they should flee away from the battlefield. They should not try to protect their country and society and their people. Ultimately, what would happen then? We can say in that situation, everything will be totally diminished, and there should not be any normalcy also. So the point is that we have challenged death. These people have challenged death in the battlefield of life, and death has itself been made shameful. Death has itself been made just die. It is why the poet makes the prediction here that death shall die its own death. And so the power of death is nothing but an illusion. It is all an illusionary view that has been created in society, that death is coming and it is killing us, it is making everything over and so on. This is nothing more than the illusion. We can say we should remove that illusion. We should just be de-illusioned of all these wrong and false conventions established in society. Once we are de-illusioned of this kind of false conviction, we can see we will see that our life is really so great, so important, so what we can call just sublime, that we have never thought of. Now we should also see that this poem is going to make just a warning to death against his power. It is just in a very aggressive mood that poet is challenging death. He is never going to just making what he can call argument on the just low and poor ground. No, the ground is so strong that he is very much challenging the death with the strength of the logic, with the strength of the argument. And so we should notice that as physical life is not permanent, so death is also not permanent. This death is only a transient phenomenon. And so, it is because of the fact that it is transient phenomenon, so it is not killing us permanently. So why should we be just horrified of the existence of death when you know that this death is not going to extinct us permanently? There is no reason to be so much fearful of all these kind of things. So it is simply the process of liberation of soul for eternal journey. We should notice that our soul is on journey, and on journey of soul we find that it passes through many lives, not only this life. So Lord Krishna has exactly told the same thing while just giving lesson of the Gita to Arjuna, that Arjuna does not know his previous life, and Arjuna does not know his life to come. Thus, this life itself is the thing that is to be enjoyed, is to be fought, is to be just very much taken very seriously. There is no question of just rethinking about the duty of Arjuna. The duty of Arjuna, the time has presented the duty of Arjuna to fight, because he knows that there will be so many people who are going to be killed in that battlefield. But the killing and death should not be the reason to make our life stop, make our duty stop. If you think that, yes, our grandfather is to be killed, and we are making our duty stop, thinking that person, we are not making justice to this life, because this is the soul's journey. This is not the body journey. We are just holding our body. Body is simply the means to make a step forward of the journey of the eternal journey of the soul. The Lord Krishna has exactly the same version to say that just you are not thinking and taking into account the journey of the soul. If you are thinking and taking into account the journey of the soul, we are not going to talk in the way that you are talking, that this death is meaningless before the eternal journey of the soul. So let you continue to fight this life. Exactly the same person is here of just the poet. I can say that whatever has been said in Indian philosophy has been later realized by the Western thinkers and the poets. We can say this kind of just a message has been given into the Indian philosophy thousands of years earlier. But to the Western viewers, this was the new, just what we can call realization of knowledge. And so the poet was just talking about all these kind of things into the 17th century. So we should understand how valuable our Indian philosophy is and how strong our Indian philosophy is, that very broadly it has been said into the Bhagavad Gita. And later on, the Western philosophers have also realized the same kind of thing. We are most often rejecting our religious texts, saying that it is unscientific, it is illogical. But the same logic has been taken by Donne as Lord Krishna has presented before Arjuna. But we can see that we are just adopting the viewpoint of Western philosophers, but we are doubting the viewpoint of Indian philosophy. But we should, I'm not here standing with the viewpoint that we should not respect Western philosophy. Definitely we should respect whatever philosophy is just before us. But before you are going to reject any philosophy, say Indian philosophy, we should think and we should analyze before doing that. If we are not analyzing, we are not thinking, and we reject only because it is Indian philosophy, we are not doing any justice to it. So here John Donne has just similarly followed the same argument and same base as Lord Krishna has done there. So it is just to describe life in terms of sleep, rest, and drug. We know that these are all just the things and agents which have temporary power to make work on just our physical existence, and equally death is doing the same kind of thing. So he is criticizing death as a slave to fate, chance, king, and disparate man. It is not more than that, and we can say that we have to understand all these kind of things in that light, in that vein, and we should notice that this is a very powerful thing that the poet has explained here, and we should understand all this point. Thank you for the time.